uber special Jill Savage. Nice enough to take a few minutes with us. All right, Jill, last night, Georgia, Alabama. Georgia whoops up on them, particularly late. What are your thoughts? What surprised you? Did anything surprise you? What was the key to the victory?
You know, I think, Dan, the thing that surprised me, and what an awesome game, first of all. A great way to cap the college football season. But the thing that surprised me is after Stetson Bennett went out and had the fumble that we all didn't think it was going to be a fumble as it was on the field, but credit to the officials for getting that right. And then Alabama scored a touchdown, which they hadn't done yet to that point in the game. And they took the lead. And I thought, oh, man, you know, Nick Saban, without John Mechie going into this game, and then without Jamison Williams, who was out with a knee injury in the second quarter, Nick Saban, oh man, he's going to find a way to do it again with a depleted roster. But that wasn't the case. Stetson Bennett said, I'm not going to let that play be the reason why we lost the game. And then he came out slinging. Like the Stetson Bennett that we saw before that fumble and after that fumble was completely different. They had some good pass plays down the field. He gets sacked, and then they get a free play. Stetson goes for it all, and Georgia regains the lead. And it was like that momentum swing right there that I didn't know if Georgia was going to have in them or not. But to come out and see this kid that, you know, like I've done it the whole season. I didn't know if Stetson Bennett was going to be good enough as the quarterback of Georgia. We know that the defense, of course, we'd seen the defense lead the whole way. We know that they were good enough to win a national championship. I didn't know if Stetson Bennett was going to be good enough. And in that exact moment, right, his back up against the wall, you're down. Bama does what Bama does. And it could be very easy for them to just sink back into the old habits like, oh, Kirby Smart, he's never beaten Alabama. This is just kind of what happens when things like this, you know, don't go your way. But credit to Georgia for giving us really, I mean, everybody in college football, you want to see somebody other than the dynasty win. And it's nice to see Georgia win for the first time in 41 years, the first time in my lifetime, Dan.
Oh, come on. That hurts because I was a senior in high school. God dang it.
It's okay. It's okay.
I was a junior in high school, and now it's just...
Aging you?
Anyway.
Ageism. Sorry.
Hey, I agree with you, though. I think that free play, where they got down the field, you needed a big play, it felt like, in this game, right? Because both defenses were humming for most of the game. But that big play allowed, I don't know, it seemed like it opened up, right? It relaxed Bennett. It relaxed Georgia, and then they started going a little bit, no?
Absolutely, yeah. And credit to Georgia and credit to Bennett for seeing that as well, because it's one of those things that, you know, he knew right away. You could tell immediately that he knew that he had that free play and to just throw it up and see what happens and take a chance. And I like that, you know, it wasn't just an easy victory. They had to take some chances and they had to go out on a limb. And that's what you want to see in a national championship game. And I know there are a lot of people out there that didn't like that it was an all SEC championship game. They didn't like that it was a rematch of the SEC champ game. But guess what? It was the two best teams in college football. And we saw one heck of a game at the end of the night. So I think that's all you can ask for on top of what should be celebrated as a great football season, right? Fans back in the stands. We had such a fun time on Outkick the Tailgate going through and seeing people all over the country. Like this is a perfect way to end a season where we really get to celebrate the game that we love.
Yeah, and I don't care whether people complained about the SEC game, Jill, because if you watch college football all year, and I know nobody watches it closer than you, come on, these are by far the two best teams. I mean, you can talk about anybody you want, but when you watch these two defenses, when you watch the speed, when you watch the size, hey, these two teams are the best. I mean, so if people didn't like the SEC, that's my thing. My ass.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we saw the semifinal games. We know what happened. None of them were competitive. Right. I mean, we saw a great Rose Bowl, but it's not like they played a ton of defense in that game. You know, we had the best two teams on the field, and there's no doubt in my mind that was the best game that we could have hoped for.
I agree. All right. Hey, you mentioned, you know, Georgia, and everybody talked about Kirby Smart and all the recruiting. What's the future here?
Well,
for Georgia.
I think that Nick Saban, when he's been quoted as saying, if the right coach gets into Georgia, watch out, because they are just a sleeping giant. Everybody knew the potential that Georgia had, and now that Kirby Smart has gotten it off his back, right? Like, he hadn't beaten Alabama, he hadn't won a national championship game. All of those things are now put to rest. You're going to have to find some new talking points going into next season and beyond, because now Kirby Smart is in a position where he can sit in kids' homes and he can say, hey, Nick Saban, he was here, but I'm the one that just beat him. And you saw how well Georgia was recruiting before they won the national championship. And now you put that on their roster as well. Like, it's only going to go up from here. The battles that we're going to see in the SEC, Texas A&M just had the #1 recruiting class, like I think they had 6 5-stars, which was the first time that number has ever been in one signing class. Like, the SEC, the dominance that they are going to continue across college football is going to be something to behold.
Yeah, and the reviews last night for Jimbo Fisher on the broadcast on ESPN2, kind of doing a Manning cast with his staff, were great. I didn't watch it, but I mean, all I read on Twitter was how much people enjoyed it. So that's a pretty smart move by him too, man. The #1 recruiting class, get your face on during the national championship game, show everybody who you are.
Exactly.
Pretty good. I mean, and let me go this route with you. 70 years old is what Nick Saban is. He looks and acts no different than anybody in their 40s or 50s. It's no disgrace to lose a national championship game. I don't know. Do you see falling off anytime soon with Alabama? How long do you think Saban's got to coach?
No chance. There is no chance that we're going to see Nick Saban falling off. If anything, Dan, it felt like this season renewed him, right? Like, he knew that he didn't have a great team, right? The depth wasn't there for Alabama this season. Despite all of that, despite not having Menchie and Williams and all that, like, he still was in a position to win the national championship in the fourth quarter.
Right.
I loved Nick Saban this season. We saw a relaxed Nick Saban, a guy who's truly enjoying himself. And the players, they would talk about it. Saban in his post-game interviews, he was just a good guy to be around. It looked like he was enjoying himself this season. So I don't care if he is 70 years old or not. Nick Saban's not going anywhere. It's still going to be harder than anything to beat him on the field, because now, guess what? We always say, like, don't bet against Nick Saban. Well, now they lost the national championship, right? So what's it going to be like next year when they're going out and trying to prove themselves all over again? He has a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. You're going to have all the pieces are going to line up at Alabama. Nobody's going to feel sorry for them.
No, nobody. Oh God, no, nobody's. They're going to beat the crap out of him. Is what they're going to want to do. Hey, how big was it? I want to go off kind of what you said there. Menchie and Williams out. How big was that?
Huge. When you saw the Iron Bowl, right? We saw Williams go out. He had a targeting call against him in the first half of that game, and that was huge. That played a huge role in the second half of that game against Auburn. You saw Menchie go out in the second quarter against Georgia in the SEC championship game. And Dan, I believe coming into the national championship game, I believe that Menchie and Williams combined for just over 2,600 yards, right? They were the top 2 wide receivers by far. The drop off to the next guy was huge. I think he had something like 350 yards. So yes, there's talent there. It's Alabama. Any wide receiver that you're going to throw in there is still going to be good. They went and used their tight ends. They figured it out because it's Nick Saban. They have the pieces there, but it was a huge difference in that game without having Williams, because he's the guy that just makes them go. And you saw even the play that he got injured on was a huge gain for Alabama. And the fact that you knew that they weren't going to have a huge running game against that Georgia front, that made it that much worse for Bama and the Tide in that one.
Yeah, I mean, you're playing with All-Americans or you're playing with backups. You know what I mean? I mean, in the biggest game of the year against the best team of the year, I mean, it's not an excuse. It's a fact. I mean, that did not help them. Bryce Young is making $1.3 million a year this year. The lawyer from Birmingham, Alabama told me that. He coming back? He has to come back, doesn't he?
He does have to come back. Yeah, you have to be 3 years removed out of high school. But it's unfortunate for Bryce Young, though, too, because if you look at the NFL draft class, like, there's not a ton of quarterbacks. So if he could go, he absolutely would be leaving, I believe, at least. I mean,
do you think he'd be the number one pick?
The number one quarterback, for sure.
Do you think he'd be the number one overall pick?
I don't think so. I think there's a lot of teams that have a lot of problems. Still,
one's right here.
Well, and we do see, and not that it's like he's the Alabama quarterback like all the rest of them. I mean, everybody that we talked to in Tuscaloosa all season long said how much they love and adore Bryce Young and how he's just the next level at everything that he does. He's so professional. Everybody enjoys being around him. He's a great work ethic guy, etc. But like you see Tua at Miami, and like, okay, he was great too. So how does that translate then to the next level? To be seen yet. But I think that Bryce Young definitely, I'm not saying he's not going to do well in the NFL, but just you have to be careful.
Yeah, I agree. Shoot, I mean, you can go back and make another $1 million this year, $1.3 million. You're in pretty good shape.
You're doing okay.
The way I live. Well, I mean, I don't know how he lives, but the way I live, you're doing fine. Who's the number one team in the country next year? Right now.
I think that you'd be tough to pick against Alabama anytime that we talk about them in any way, shape, or form. If it's going to be winning a game, if it's going to be the number one team next year, Bryce Young returning, as we mentioned, I think that they will come with a fire lit underneath them. Another team that I would put in the mix would be Ohio State, right? It's very similar. They're used to being in the college football playoff. They were not this year. CJ Stroud is obviously going to be coming back as well. And losing to Michigan, I think that they're going to do the opposite of what, Michigan used to have, like that period at the end of every practice to beat Ohio State. And I think that Ohio State is going to come out with a renewed sense of, confidence and trying to come back and improve themselves to be worthy of the college football playoff once again. And then, Georgia, they just won. They have to be thrown in that mix if you're going to be talking about them as well. But they're going to be losing Nakobe Dean, Jordan Davis up front. That defense, it's still going to be good. And the reason that I would say Georgia isn't going to have the big fall off, one, they have a ton of 5-star guys. But two, the way that they dominated games, Dan, this season, they played their backups like the second half of every football game that they were in. So they have experience now in actual game, and that's invaluable. And if Alabama, they're going to get back up to that point as well for next season, and it's just going to be a huge battle in the SEC once again.
Let me go to the NFL. You mentioned, Clemson's always around it. Michigan, the narrative on Harbaugh has totally changed from a year ago when he was fighting to keep his job and fighting to keep his money. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's talking, not everybody, but a lot of people are talking about him interviewing for NFL jobs. Let me ask you, do you anticipate Harbaugh or maybe Dabo Swinney talking to NFL teams? Seriously talking, not just, but seriously interviewing themselves with NFL teams?
Yeah. The thing with Harbaugh that I look at, that if you're right, we look at Mike Tomlin going the other way, right? When the USC rumors were out, he's like, there's not enough money in the world. There's not a big enough blank check. He squashed that rumor immediately.
Yes.
And he did it the best way that I've ever seen a coach do it. Jim Harbaugh isn't saying anything. He's not saying, oh, no, I'm committed to Michigan. This is where I want to be. Look at how these people have embraced me once again, even though I had some troubles the last few years. We got it all rolling now. He's not saying any of that. In fact, there was a recruit that came out that said that Harbaugh had told him that he would be exploring, just looking into some NFL options. So it's when you don't have that adamant denial that it's one of two things, right? You're looking for a contract extension, or you're actually looking to leave. So for me with Harbaugh, it's unfortunate because I think that college football finally got into a place where we're like, all right, good for you, Jim. Like, you did it. You've proved us all wrong for this season. We didn't think that you could come out. We certainly didn't think that you were ever going to actually beat Ohio State. You did. Great job. And now that he has some of that support, now he's like, oh, maybe I'll go back to the NFL. If
I'm him, it's a nice position to be in. Let's put it that way, right?
It's a great position. There's nothing wrong with it either. I mean,
because a year ago,
this is what they do.
He was in a he was in a crap position. He had to take cuts. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he was kind of on prove-it money, right?
Yeah. He took the salary cut himself, and he bet on himself, which is exactly what you want a coach to do. It's kind of the Scott Frost situation that they have in Nebraska, where Scott's taking $1 million less, but in retooling his entire offensive staff and saying, okay, I think that I am still the person for this job. That's exactly what Harbaugh did. And it's just kind of funny though now, like really you only needed to prove it 1 year. That's all you needed, Jim. Just prove it to yourself for 1 year and then you're gonna potentially leave and take an NFL job. I don't know. Like stick around college. It's more fun. Come on.
You gotta go get $30 million, which is what's rumored for Texas A&M to get this class from a bunch of, I don't know, a bunch of booster dudes. What's fun about that?
No, it's true. I will say, like, if you're coaching, it's way more work in college. NFL, you're just coaching football. You're not having to recruit. You're not having to do the dinners and the boosters and all that. I totally get that. But I'm saying, like, as a sport, college football, like for me, like. When you have Bedlam right this year and it was at Oklahoma State and they were playing Colin Baton Rouge to like get at Lincoln Riley because everybody still thought he was going to go to LSU, like that to me, like you can't beat that stuff, like the antics that they have in college football. I love it.
I will be honest, Jill, I totally agree with you. Like I had season tickets to the Colts games up until Corona, and a friend of mine had 10 season tickets. I bought 2 off him. Greatest seats in the place. 6 rows up, right on the aisle, 50-yard line behind the visitor's bench. I didn't like going. I don't know why. The NFL game, there's no momentum. My wife and I and my daughter went to the Tennessee at Alabama game this year. Jill, I think I told you, it was the coolest thing I've ever been to. I think I've been to cool sporting events. It's been the coolest experience I ever had at a sporting event. Was a regular season game at Alabama. I totally agree with you. But if I'm coaching, man, I don't want to deal with the pains in the ass I got to deal with in college. I'll just give me the pains in the ass of the NFL. That's easier. Yeah, I think.
Without a doubt. I'm right there with you, Dan. And you can pick a college football game, and it can be a regular season game, and it can be some of the most fun that you've ever had. And I hope that you enjoyed the Colts game, because after watching it the last couple of days, I don't know if they're going to let you back in the stadium, Dan. I don't know. They might have you on a list. They might have your picture up, and they might not. They might be like, have you seen this guy? If you do, don't let him back yet.
A true story. They listen every day. And Ballard is actually a friend of mine. And I don't know if he's a friend now, because I went on a pretty good rant yesterday. But you might be.
Dan,
right.
they lost one more thing on the Colts. I mean, come on. You lost the game to the Jaguars, whose fans came dressed as clowns. Is there a lower point than that? Like, you're supposed to win and get in, buddy. Let's go.
Right. Hey, they lost 2 in a row to interim coaches, 1 at home. They weren't even competitive against the Jaguars. That's what got me. They were hanging their head. It's like, well, we're not going to lose to these guys. And then all of a sudden, guess what? Trevor Lawrence. You saw Trevor Lawrence in college. He wasn't very good this year in the NFL. He was great the other day. Good for him, right?
Good for him. Good for him. Way to bounce back, Jaguars, who completely folded the week before. But they could take out your Colts. Don't worry, Dan. They still had a little bit of life left in them.
Do you know how many meats, or do you know how many encased meats, cheeses, and crackers I bought for Wild Card Weekend to watch the freaking Colts?
You can have a party still. There's still going to be some great games, Dan. It's just not going to involve a team from Indianapolis.
I know, and I grew up a Chicago Bears fan. They're looking for a freaking GM and a coach and a. Ah! All right. Do you have? Is there like anybody that you've come across? Because my guy is Ryan Grigson. When Ryan Grigson was a GM here, the guy just won. He took over a 2-14 team, drafted Andrew Luck, but his rookie class gained more yards than any rookie class in history. He got screwed here by a bunch of sentiment and whatever. So he would be my guy that I would hire as a general manager. Is there anybody that you've seen in the landscape of college and professional football that you're like, you know what, this guy really needs to be a GM?
You know, there are still some that are coming up the college ranks. I don't think that they're ready yet. But what I would say is if I'm looking to hire an NFL GM, I'm looking at the teams that have been there, that have done it, that have mentored a guy who's, you know, like second or third in line that you can bring on. Like, look at the Bills and the way that they were able to build their roster once again. Like, that's an impressive turnaround for them. I would look to them. I would look to the Patriots. I would look to the Chiefs, the Steelers, right? Like the established teams. That's where I'm pulling my pool of candidates from. You can forget the Texans, forget the Browns, forget the Jags right now. Like, no, I don't want to build off of that. I want to have somebody that has seen success and that can try and implement it from there. So, you know, I think that like something like the Dallas Cowboys, I'm here at Dallas. It's hard to build that because it's Jerry Jones. Like that's not really a repeatable process for me.
So our guy here in Indy, Chris Ballard, is 42-42.
Yep.
Over his 5 years here. He's got 0 division titles in the weakest division, arguably in the history of football this year, but arguably as weak a division as there is, along with the NFC East. He's got 1 playoff win. He's been to the playoffs twice, once because they added an extra playoff. Listen to this. So 2 of his assistants are being interviewed for general manager's job. His defensive coordinator with a defense that hadn't stopped anybody when it really mattered is interviewing for head coaching jobs. Like, if I'm with you, give me somebody that we got real success. The national media guys are like, well, all the performance of the Colts in the drafting, they're 42-42 in a bad division.
Nope.
How do you think that's success?
Nope. You know, I want to see this success, and I don't care. Like, yes, the NFL draft, obviously it matters, and some guys are you're gonna hit on some guys, you're gonna miss on some others. I get that, but guess what? When they get there and they're on your roster, I want to see the production that they have. I don't care so much about what you can do in a couple, weekend in April. Like, great. Everybody has to do that. We all go through the same process. But show me what you can build now. It's so crazy to me how many GMs, first of all, GMs last way longer than head coaches. For whatever reason, they don't get the blame. Right. And they're the ones that usually have the ultimate power over the roster moves anyway. So it's a better life, I think, than coaching. You live a lot longer with one team that way.
It amazes, like I always tell coaches will call me. There was a time, even though I was at Bowling Green, like all these head coaches from across the country, the biggest head coaches would call me for whatever the reason, because I was known as a guy that could help get through problems. And it's amazing to me. I always said, man, get on the right side of the media. Because I'm looking at Chris Ballard and Frank Reich. They got this Hard Knocks going where everybody loves them, right? But they're 9-8 with 7 Pro Bowlers, and yet they're like, "Oh, let's interview everybody." No, do what you say. I want an Andy Reid guy. I don't care. I want whatever. Hey, speaking of the NFL and my encased meats and cheeses that are going to have to be eaten without the Colts or the Bears, any game you're looking forward to this weekend?
The first game on the slate, I'd say the Raiders and Bengals. The Raiders win and get in, right? Like that was.
Are you a big Joe Burrow fan?
I am. I'm not, because he beat me in the fantasy football league. I was in my Super Bowl and they had Burrow and Chase. There was no getting by that. But now that it's just watching for fun, yeah, sign me up. I think that, it's so funny because as a kid, I would always say like Bengals and Browns. Like, who wants to watch that game? Like, that game was the least appealing game to me of all time. We had NFL Sunday Ticket when I was growing up, and I was like, we are not watching that game. I don't care if there's nothing else on. That game is still not on my TV. And now I'm like, oh, the Bengals, like, they're pretty fun. Like, I'm excited to watch them this weekend. And then another game, because it's all the nostalgia. It's all the feels with the 49ers and the Cowboys, right? Like, give me the good early 90s vibes, and we'll go into Super Wild Card Weekend with some awesome games.
I knew. That's why I closed my eyes and shook my head. I knew you were going to go with the Cowboys because in the world that you live in, which is in Dallas, nothing's more important than the Cowboys.
But I'm not a Cowboys fan.
Oh, okay.
No, and I just moved out. Like, there's no.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
there's
you're
nothing.
West Coast. So
there's I'm originally from Iowa.
Are you a 49er fan?
No, I'm originally from Iowa.
That's right.
So I grew up a Chiefs fan. My dad's a Packers fan. But like the Derek Thomas, Tony Gonzalez days of the Kansas City Chiefs, like that was my wheelhouse. Like that was it. Now I just cheer for the guys that I know. I don't care. Fantasy football's ruined it all for me. I care more about like the college teams that win than the NFL teams that win. I just want to be entertained for the NFL.
I had a friend of mine. He grew up with me. We were big Chicago Bears fans, and he called me the other day. We were talking. He goes, "You know what's ruined NFL football for me?" I go, "What?" He goes, "Fantasy football and gambling." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because back when we were kids, we knew every Bear player. We rooted for the Bears. We didn't care about, we'd watch the second game, but the Bears were it." He goes, "Now," I don't even have a team. The only team I got is my fantasy team, and I want to watch them. And then the only other teams I got are the ones I bet on."
Exactly.
I kind of get that.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, like having the job that I have and now knowing the kids, I just still call them kids because they all are, they go on to the NFL. I just want to see them succeed and do well. And so my rooting interests have changed so much over the years. It's crazy.
Yeah. That's how I am with football, college football, and actually some pro guys, and certainly college basketball. I root for the coaches. I root for the guys that I know, the guys I came up the ranks with, the guys. And, in the media, if a guy's a decent dude, you root for him too. All right, you're the best. Everybody's telling me this is their favorite segment of the week, and it's my favorite too. You're awesome.
You're awesome.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy your encased meats. You know what? I might go buy some cheese and crackers and encased meats too, and just be right there with you this weekend, Dan.
Pro tip. Ritz cracker, whatever cheese you like, and put a dab of strawberry jelly on top.
Ooh.
Pro tip.
All right.
There.
I might do that.
That's a good move. Thank you. You're the best.
Talk to you later.